What is privilege to you?
I think privilege is having it easier than others.
You are given something more of a priority.
Sometimes it's probably maybe even undeserved, like you didn't really work for it, but
you get special treatment.
I never had to think about privilege growing up, like all these years in Singapore, and that in itself was privilege for me.
I'm going to do an experiment with 10 participants. I'm going to ask them a series of questions and they're going to step forward or backwards depending on how they identify with the statements. If you agree with this, you step forward. If you disagree, you step back. In the last 1 week, I have seen an advertisement with a model of the same race as me. My boss is the same race as me. Agree, step forward. I have never been the only person of my race in the room. In the last month, you tried to get food and the person spoke to you in a language you didn't understand. If this has happened to you, step back. In the last 1 month, your friends in conversation have used the words "you people" to you, meaning your whole race. Take a step back if this has happened to you. Take a step back if this has happened to you. You've done something well and you've been congratulated because you're a credit to your race. Your race has been brought up in a job interview. Someone's made fun of you at school because of the color of your skin. At school or at work, you have 2 or less food stalls where you can get food you like. You've ever been asked to stop loitering at the void deck. You've watched a racial stereotype on TV and you thought it was offensive. Step back. You've heard your friends make a joke about race, make a joke about a racial stereotype, but you were too afraid to say anything. You didn't want to cause offense. You felt this was a problem, but you didn't say anything. If that has happened to you, step back. Never happened to you, step forward.
So when I first started this experiment, I thought I would end up somewhere in the middle.
I didn't expect to land right at the back. I thought I'd be somewhere in between.
I ended up being the last one and it feels weird because I would think that someone who is of a more minority than I am, like the Indian lady, would be behind me.
When the experiment ended, I turned around and there were people who were kind of close to me and there were people who were like really far back as well. And I just felt like, whoa, there's so much difference in our experiences in Singapore. Even though in my head I knew that this would happen, it still felt like, wow, like I wouldn't have wanted people to have felt all these negative experiences. I never actually had an encounter with my close friends where I felt that they were being racist towards me. I always felt that they were being racist towards other people, but not to me.
it didn't hit me then, but when I saw the gap, it just hit me that time, yeah.
I do feel lousy to see that after so many years of racial harmony, somehow I feel that inside us, people do feel that they've been discriminated.
Step back if you agree with this. At school or at work, you have 2 or less food stalls. In the last month, you've tried to get food and the person spoke to you in a language you didn't understand.
For me, mostly if you talked about privilege, I think it's language. You know, I do have friends and colleagues who come from the dominant race and maybe consciously or unconsciously, they speak their language for a prolonged period of time.
I was happy in the fact that my son was not far ahead of me, or what, because he used to discuss with me, and then he used to debate with me that he said, I don't think so, I will not have that sort of issues. But when I looked at him, he was not very far away from me. So I guess that is reality, and that sort of opened up his vision about it.
I didn't expect to be as close to my mother at the back, because I felt much more privileged as opposed to my mother when it came to the problems that she shared with me about getting a job, her age, her race.
When he asked all those questions, I realized, how come I experienced all these things before? How come I never really thought about it? I think I dismissed it a lot, and I think I always thought that to be progressive in this society, you need to not let these things affect you. I think I grew up with that mentality, and then I think that's why I turned a blind eye towards a lot of these things.
You've watched a racial stereotype on TV and you thought it was offensive. You've heard your friends make a joke about race, but you were too afraid to say anything.
I don't see that I'm enjoying a special privilege in Singapore. I feel that it's pretty equal.
To be honest, I feel that in Singapore currently, I think that racial harmony is a okay thing, because it's not like people discriminate each other.
There are certain things that the majority race would not identify with because they're not exactly made aware of the fact. It's not that they purposely want to go out there, I want to marginalize a Malay, I want to marginalize an Indian. It's just that it's their way of life, and they're just not open to seeing how other people's way of life is.
I don't have special privilege, but in the mind of the minority, I think they felt that we have a lot of privileges. And for us, we don't feel it. So I think the important thing is that as a majority, we have to be a bit sensitive, whatever we say, or even in a job opportunity or that.
I've never been able to discuss race issues with anyone. Not at all. Not at all. Or throughout my years, no. Unless you are very close friends, you can discuss about it. But someone who's a stranger, you sort of like accept it and deal with it.
Race, this kind of issue is more sensitive, and we don't really talk about, sensitive issue nowadays.
I think it's important that we are able to talk about it than just, let it brush off. Because if you just keep sweeping things under the rug, then we wouldn't even see it as a problem, and then it will just one day explode to something bigger. So this conversation is really good. It's a good starting point.
I think I realized that, okay, I've neglected this as an important issue. Like, it's real, It's not just something that I read online, because I'm always on social media. It's not something that I read online and people get upset about it, but it's really real.